Okay, well, good afternoon, all, and thank you again for your time this afternoon. We appreciate you joining us here for the 2022 annual convening of the Ohio Nutrition Incentive Network. In this specific session, USDA programs and their impacts. My name is Tevis Foreman, and I serve as the Executive Director of Produce Perks Midwest, and I'm extremely excited about the series of sessions we have going on today. And hope that you will continue to stay with us and learn about the many organizations, projects, and programs that create Ohio's local food systems. You can still register for any session, and we'll share the session titles and links to register in the chat box now. So Anna, if you don't mind doing that for me, and thank you. We are also beginning each session with a land acknowledgement, which we have sourced from the Ohio State University's Office of Diversity and Inclusion. A land acknowledgement that recognizes and respects the relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their ancestral and contemporary territories. These lands were ceded in the 1795 Treaty of Greenville and the forced removal of tribes through the Indian Removal Act of 1830. At this time, we'd also like to invite you to add your pronouns to your displayed Zoom name if you're so inclined, and/or share them in the chat box. And for those that may be joining us for the first time today, if this is your first session, the Ohio Nutrition Incentive Network is a multi-sector coalition working toward a shared vision of affordable access to healthy local foods in a healthy, equitable, and resilient Ohio food system. The network represents diverse regions of Ohio and collaborates to advance nutrition incentive programming statewide. We will also be sharing a full contact list early next week that includes the recordings of all the sessions and notes, as well as slides from the sessions today. So should you miss anything or not have an opportunity to ask the questions you may want to ask, we will be following up accordingly with all contents from the presentations today. Also, OHNIN members have a specific background and have included their OHNIN names in their profile, so you'll be able to recognize OHNIN members accordingly. And our network is also looking to expand and diversify. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate to contact Anna Bird at Produce Perks Midwest, and we'll place her email here in the chat box accordingly. So now it's time to begin the content of our session. We have reserved time at the end for Q&A, but we are monitoring the chat, so please feel free to put any questions in that come up, and we will certainly answer them accordingly. We'll also take note to answer at the end of the session as well. So in this session, I'm happy to present, 4 tremendous human beings, as well as experts in their respective fields. 2 on federal food systems, Amalie Lipstreu, with the policy director of the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, and Ben Feldman, executive director of the Farmers Market Coalition, as well as 2 beneficiaries of federal grant programs, the wonderful Amalie Diefendorf, the market manager of the Northside Farmers Market, and Maddie Chera, the director of the Greater Cincinnati Regional Food Policy Council. So Amalie, I believe we have you slated to kick us off, followed by Ben, then Emily, and Maddie. So at this time, Amalie, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Tevis. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. Make sure you can all see that screen okay? Okay, great. It's really good to talk a little bit about, let me just get this going here for you. It's really good to talk about the programs that come out of USDA, and I'm glad that that there are 2 presenters that have firsthand experience with USDA programs. It's really important that we have good communication back and forth about how those programs work, when they don't work, whenever adjustments need to be made, so that we can make sure those changes take place. A lot of, really all of the USDA programs that we're talking about are governed by the Farm Bill. And it's good to understand some of the detail surrounding this omnibus legislation that's passed only once every 5 years. The current Farm Bill was written and finalized in 2018. It expires on September 30th of 2023, and efforts to set the stage for that bill are already moving forward. I'm sure as many of you know, the makeup of the Farm Bill is predominantly the nutrition title. It represents almost 80% of all Farm Bill spending. And those other programs that are farm and rural development type programs represent those other non-blue colors in there. But one of the things I really think is important, there were two things that are really important to set the stage. One is to look at some of the gains that were made in the last Farm Bill, because they're really significant. And, you know, while sometimes this legislation can feel like, well, it is huge, but it can feel very like far away and like it doesn't have a lot of impact, but it does. And making changes to these kinds of bills is really slow. You know, it's incremental change. Sometimes it can take many farm bills. And again, they're only written once every 5 years to see some of the changes that we want to see. So we want to realize the progress that's been made, especially in the last Farm Bill. But it's also really good just to develop an understanding of mandatory money, because I think you'll, you know, if you don't already know, you'll understand how important that is going forward. And really important piece of the Farm Bill, you know, as you know, every organization and industry has their own acronyms, and the Farm Bill is no different. In the last Farm Bill, the local and regional food systems programming was all bundled together under what they called the LAMP programs, and that's the local ag market program. The LAMP program, for the first time ever in the last Farm Bill, got $50 million a year in mandatory funding. And why that's important, unless you reach that milestone of $50 million for your program, then your program is, number one, not a permanent part of the Farm Bill. And if you don't have mandatory funding, what often happens is that you have to go to the appropriations committees every year and ask for money, because your program may be in law, it may be authorized, but that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed funding every year. Even with mandatory funding, sometimes you have to defend it against challenges. But once you reach that milestone of $50 million a year for your program in the Farm Bill, it becomes a permanent part of the Farm Bill going forward. And as many of you know, these are programs that we care a lot about: the Farmers Market and Local Food Promotion Program, Value Added Producer Grant, Regional Food Systems Partnership Program that brings together kind of public and private players to work together. And I know many of you have gotten funding in some of these programs. So in addition to that $50 million in mandatory funding and that important milestone, food councils were now explicitly defined as eligible entities for the purposes of writing and receiving grants. And there was more focus on facilitating regional food chain coordination, or value chain coordination, as it's often referred to. That was included to add more emphasis and recognition of the human capital necessary to coordinate activities across the supply chain. Just briefly to mention organic agriculture, because we strongly believe that having organic agriculture is a really critical part of, as Teva said, resilient food systems. We received mandatory funding for organic research, which is really important. It's a sector of agriculture that hasn't always received its due when it comes to research or extension support. And one thing that's important to note is that money we invest in organic research also benefits all farmers, but the converse is not necessarily true. This beginning farmer piece is critical as well. We're not going to have viable, resilient food systems, healthy food access unless we continue having next generation farmers. And I think by now we all understand that there are many underserved farmers, people who have been historically discriminated against by USDA. In the last Farm Bill, they combined the beginning farmer and rancher development program along with what's called the 2501 program, which works a lot on supporting some of these underserved farmers into one bucket called the Farming Opportunity Training and Outreach Program. It's another one of those areas where we got to win. These programs got $50 million a year in mandatory funding. They're going to be part of the Farm Bill going forward from now into the future. Again, that also allows us to put our attention on other things that we want to become permanent, other changes that we think need to be made. And as I'm sure you all know, the 2018 Farm Bill authorized the produce prescription pilot program, so that that pilot program was 10% of FINI funds in the last Farm Bill. They also created the Urban, Indoor, and Other Emerging Ag Production Research, Education, and Extension Initiative, along with some grant funding for that, and setting up a 15-member Urban Agriculture Advisory Committee. Again, it's important to note that some of the funding that went to this area was appropriations authority, meaning, you can ask us for money every year and we might give it to you. So that mandatory funding, again, is just really, really important. And then one final thing on, the wins in the last Farm Bill. The previous Farm Bill basically told the USDA to allow farmers markets to operate an individual EBT device for accepting SNAP benefits at more than one location, which is, resolved a long-standing barrier to communities working to increase access to fresh fruits and vegetables in a cost-effective manner. And then finally, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program was reauthorized with $20 million in funding. Also important to know that this is something that's a very strong priority for Ohio Representative Marcy Kaptur. And I'll talk briefly about her in just a minute. In closing, because I think we've got about 8 minutes each here, I think it's important just to pay attention to the names on the screen here. Chera Brown, as you all know, has been a really important champion on these issues. He cares a lot about local and regional food systems, about healthy food access. Because of his work, not just in the 2018 Farm Bill, but in prior Farm Bills, we have a lot of programs that we might not have otherwise. And I think Chera Brown, in addition to Chera on the Senate side, Representative Shelley Pingree on the House side is also really important. But back to other Ohio members on the ag committees, on the House Ag Committee, we've got Representative Chantel Brown, who replaced Marcia Fudge up there in the Cleveland area. Just a really important ally because, that does represent one of the poorest legislative districts in the country, actually. Troy Balderson, who serves a larger swath of East Central Ohio since redistricting, and Marcy Kaptur, who unfortunately her district has shrunk a little bit. It used to be called the Snake on the Lake because it went from Toledo all the way across to Cleveland, but now it's really focused in that Toledo area, which, puts her a little bit of a challenge in the upcoming midterms. And speaking of midterms, just a brief understanding of process is important. I mentioned that some of the work for the 2023 Farm Bill has already begun. Congress has been having listening sessions across the state, and actually Marcy Kaptur and Sherry Bustos had a listening session on the Farm Bill in Northwest Ohio just last month. So it's good to stay tuned to the House and Senate Ag committees. You can see what hearings they've already had. Those are all recorded, so you can hear what some of the discussion has been, which can help develop an understanding of where our members of Congress stand on the issues we care about. And after the midterm election, we're going to see more marker bills come out. Those kind of test the waters, like how much support exists in our community for this idea. How many other legislators are willing to sign on? Those marker bills end up, if they have the level of support needed, becoming a part of the Farm Bill. And again, this is really important because this is a way we can have a formative impact on the next Farm Bill. As those marker bills come out, we can review them. We can see what makes sense, what doesn't. Is there something missing? Is there something we want to change? So this is our opportunity to really be active and get the kind of policies and programs that we want and need. And then, after that, there'll likely be some floor action. I'm going to turn it over to Ben Feldman here in just a minute, but I just want to mention, OFA has worked to do a lot of outreach over the past year. These are the 5 tenets of our Farm Bill platform. I won't read them to you. You can see, they're pretty straightforward. Certainly investments in local and regional food systems is a key part of that, and healthy food access is a part of that. We have 5 work groups that are going to be doing that work I just mentioned, of looking at those marker bills, reviewing them, and advocating with the Ohio delegation to advance our priorities. So really important work. We're willing to engage and to support you with any questions that you have about any of these issues, and hopefully have the kind of outcome that we want to see. So just need to get my computer to do what I want it to do here. And excuse me. So I can stop sharing my screen and send it over. And it's all over to you now, Ben.
Thanks, Amalie. That was such a wonderful intro to the Farm Bill. Sets my presentation up beautifully. So my name is Ben Feldman. I'm the executive director here at the National Farmers Market Coalition. Our work focuses on strengthening farmers markets for the benefit of farmers, consumers, and communities. And we do that through a focus on farmers market operators, that is to say the organizations and individuals who run farmers markets around the country. We're a member organization with members in all 50 states, as well as Puerto Rico and Canada. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about Farmers Market Coalition's Farm Bill platforms, and part of that is because they are very much related to the LAMP program, and follow very well from Amelie's presentation, and hopefully set up the stage for some of the folks who are to follow. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I don't have the same slideshow, but I do want to share Farmers Market Coalition's policy priorities. So this is simply our website with our updated policy priorities for the upcoming Farm Bill. I'm going to also try to avoid just reading them, but I want to underscore the point that Amalie made about the significance of getting to baseline funding for the local agricultural marketing programs, and the very strategic nature of combining the farmers market, local food, value-added producer grant, and regional food systems partnership program into one larger program, the LAMP grant program, because that is what allowed getting those programs to that level. Each of the individual programs did not have the level of funding to get there on their own, but by being able to add them together and then get the funding in that up a little bit, we're now in that much stronger position, and allows us to focus on improvements to the program. Our focus overall within the Farm Bill is to make grant programs that especially those that are commonly applied for and received by market organizations and those working on farmers markets and other direct marketing agriculture, are easier to apply for, are simpler, and more accessible. That applies to the LAMP grants as well as the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. So some of the way we've been approaching this advocacy, much of that has been done through our work with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and an emphasis on this idea of, in particular within the LAMP grant programs, a simplified application process. This is something that we've been pursuing for many years. Unfortunately, USDA has had their concerns or their challenges in implementing a simpler grant application process. So we've now sort of tried to come with some specific recommendations and drawing on other programs that have done this. So this is where this idea of a simplified application process for grants less than $100,000 to be used for a pre-established set of activities. The reason we're using that language is this gets to a program or something called turnkey grants, which are used in some of the farm to school grant programs, which if any of you work on that, you may be familiar with. The advantage here is that, again, it creates a pre-established set of activities, some of the most commonly applied for activities within the grant program. And then for those activities, grantees can apply at a lower threshold with essentially an application process that is pre-populated for many of the questions that would typically be asked, streamlining that application process. Also, streamlining the review process for USDA, as well as the administration process for USDA, because that has been one of the sources of pushback to this point. We're also pushing for reduced or eliminating match requirements. We know that these are, in particular, two of the biggest barriers to organizations that are either struggling to apply for the grant or have not even been interested in applying because of these barriers. We're also looking to improve the assistance provided to grantees and potential grantees to do additional review and reporting on the grant reports that exist. There's a wealth of information that's being submitted by grantees to USDA, but unfortunately that information is really just it basically sits at USDA when there could be some valuable lessons learned, best practices, and trend analysis conducted with those reports. So that's an important piece of our priorities, as well as greater geographic balance relative to the benefits of the program. As is the case with many of the federal grant programs, the distribution of those programs on a geographic basis has been unequal in the past, and certain regions of the country, notably the Great Plains region and the Southeast or the Deep South, have received substantially fewer applications, even when adjusted for population. And then another piece here is that we're asking for SNAP activities to be returned as eligible activities within the farmers market and local food or the farmers market promotion program grants. In up to 2014, that was an eligible set of activities. In fact, 10% of the funding pool for farmers market promotion program grants was reserved for SNAP activities. That was removed in 2014, and the basis for that was that there are other sources of funding for those types of activities. Unfortunately, that's not really the case anymore. There was a one-time pot of funding for SNAP support grants that USDA had, but at this point, unless an organization has funding for their incentive programs through GusNIP, there's no support for the administration, outreach, or planning activities related to administering SNAP in a farmer's market. So it makes it challenging for markets to spin up new programs to administer SNAP at their market. We also have some goals related to the Gushy Market Nutrition Incentive Program, particularly around funding and program design. We support and match, which is not specifically identified here on our priorities, which should be. We're also seeking reduction or elimination of the match for the Gushy Market Nutrition Incentive Program. And when we speak to program design and this piece about not undermining the effectiveness of farmers market and other direct market sales, some of you may be cognizant of the recent issues coming up on the request for proposals around the earn and spend mechanisms that were allowed. In order to clarify that issue, we're seeking that specific language in statute that clarifies that, to get too far into the weeds here, but in addition to a produce for produce match, a SNAP for produce or a produce for SNAP match are eligible mechanisms to trigger that benefit. And then I'm going to skip number 3 on our list, as I don't think it is so relevant to our audience today. But then lastly, ensuring that the Senior Farmers Market Program is well funded, equitably distributed, and there's additional support for administration, as well as considerations of the move to an electronic distribution method. We are certainly concerned about the move to electronic distribution for this program, particularly this program, given seniors' ability to engage with technology. Something that we're seeing obviously more in the WIC program, but there is consideration in a number of states about the possible move to an electronic distribution for Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. When we speak to the equitably distributed piece, just a little background there, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, as well as the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program, but WIC is not part of the Farm Bill, so we'll sort of leave it aside for a moment. But both of those programs, the distribution and federal funding goes to states. And as of now, that is based on historic allocations rather than a metric that is based on the purpose of the program. For example, we are suggesting that should be based on percentage of seniors in poverty for those states rather than simply the historic amounts that states have received in order to address equitability within the program. And I think I'll stop there on the specifics of our policy positions on the Farm Bill. Happy to answer any questions that might come up. And just to build on what Amalie was speaking about in terms of marker bills and the importance of Ohio in the upcoming Farm Bill, Marcy Kaptur has already introduced a bill on a marker bill on the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. It is designed to carve out this as a priority for her and her office. It definitely needs, from our perspective, it needs a little bit of work to get to some of these issues, but it's an important starting point. And their office has been very explicit that they are very open to feedback on how to improve that bill. So now is a wonderful time to be reaching out to her office, expressing your appreciation of the leadership that she's taking on that bill and advising any areas where you see necessary changes, including some of the pieces we've talked about today. And then we also do anticipate that Sheriff Brown's office will be introducing a bill focused on the LAMP program, as well as some other local food pieces. So that would be a great opportunity to engage with their office and learn more about what's in that bill if it's of interest to you. I suspect for many of the people on the call it is. And the last thing I'm going to say is that the chair and ranking member of the House Ag Committee have put together a feedback form by which they are taking input from people across the country on their priorities for the Farm Bill. It's definitely it's not totally clear to me, to what extent that is going to influence the long-term outcome. But right now, it's one of the main ways that folks have an opportunity to engage in the Farm Bill. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat in just a moment. Feel free to use this as a way to communicate your priorities to members of Congress in leadership on the House Agriculture Committee. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. And beyond that, thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you all today.
Thank you, Ben. Much appreciated. Emily, we'll turn it over to you.
Here we go. Can you guys see my screen? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I see you.
You can see me, not my screen.
We can see both your screen and hear you.
Great, thank you. My name is Amalie Diefendorf, and I manage the Northside Farmers Markets. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program funding has affected our markets.
Emily, I am going to interrupt you for just a moment. It looks like your notes are up. We can see. There you go.
All right.
Good to go.
We're situated in Cincinnati, in the very eclectic neighborhood of Northside. And we are open every Wednesday year round from 4 to 7. So we are in a very unique position that we are actually a project of our local community council. And that means that we are run by a board of directors, and that board of directors is made up of vendors and frequent shoppers, a member of our local community council, and a member of our business association. And this means that we have a lot of buy-in within our community. And that means that we have seen more success, I think, than most farmers markets because of that. We also are guided by a threefold mission. So part of that is, number one would be supporting our community in increasing access to healthy foods. And number two would be providing education so that we have a higher consumption of those fresh local foods. And number three would be supporting our local food producers. So making it so that it's a viable business option for them so that they can actually make a living. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program grant. So with quite a bit of help from the Farmers Market Coalition and from Produce Perks, I was able to apply for the FMPP grant in 2021, and we got it. So we've just finished up the first year of our grant. And I'll talk a little bit about each of the goals that we have, but the main idea is that it was going to help us solve some problems. So with the onset on COVID, we were limited on quite a few things. As far as the number of vendors go, we had to be limited because we had space issues with social distancing. And we also had, because of COVID, we saw a 49% increase in sales for us. And the customers' shopping habits actually changed. So people spent more at the market with less time, of course. But they also have continued to come to the market. So we want to make sure that we are keeping those people a part of the market and keeping that habit. And then we've also seen that the food pantry that we donate our excess produce to, that they have also seen a huge increase in need. And so we want to make sure that the people that don't know about the programs that we offer actually can come and use those programs. So at the market, one of the things is that we are located in a food desert and have been since 2013. So there is no grocery store. And people have to take a couple of buses to even get to a grocery store. So we are their grocery store. And so that means that we have tried really hard to make sure that we are offering other options. So people can come to our information booth and they can swipe their debit and credit card and get tokens to spend at the market like cash. But then we also offer SNAP benefits with tokens. And then we do the dollar for dollar $25 match for produce perks. In addition to that, we've also been participating in the TANF program this year and been a distribution site. So people that kind of fall into that cusp where they need extra help getting fruits and vegetables, we are able to fill that need. And we are in our third year of working with the Council on Aging to do the Ohio Senior Farmers Market coupons as well. In addition to whenever we see WIC, sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on what their setup is. So the first goal of our FMPP grant was to increase food access through intensified outreach and marketing. And Ben kind of mentioned this about the need to decrease the matching program because they require at least, I think the highest was 25% for a match, which is quite a bit. And so we were lucky enough to find a marketing agency that has similar interests and goals as far as being philanthropic. And so they helped us meet that matching goal. But really the idea with this is making sure that we are working with that marketing agency, and we've been able to hire a marketing assistant. So that takes it off my shoulders. And then they're producing things like social media ads and radio ads, printed ads. And they're also doing printed materials that we can distribute to our local food pantry, the WIC offices, the places where we know that people may not know about our services. Our second goal is to support new and existing farmers and food producers through incentives, training, and mentoring. So this is one that's kind of near and dear to my heart, because ultimately a farmer's market is an incubator. So we are the place where businesses can dip their toes in and see if it's actually going to be successful or not. And then ultimately, hopefully, if they are successful, then moving on to open their own brick and mortar store or to expand their services. And so one of the things we're doing is we're working with OSU Extension and doing vendor booth assessments, and also surveying the vendors to see what kind of things they need. Do they need help with social media ads? Do they need help with making sure that they're meeting their local health guidelines? Do they need help with setting up their booths, like with what the layout should be? Really, whatever they need is what they're going to tailor the training to. And then another part of this is also making it so that we have a mentorship program. So we are matching our new vendors with our graduate vendors. So the ones that have moved on to open their own brick and mortar stores, or are selling at more than one farmer's market, or whatever that goal is that they have, we're going to match the new vendors up with those vendors, and just give them the opportunity to have those conversations. Like, are they having issues with cultivation? Is it an issue with making sure that they're getting the proper licensing? Really, whatever it is. It's been nice that we've been able to keep that a little bit more open-ended, so that it really is meeting them wherever they need to be met. And I've actually been having a conversation with one of our vendors, and they want to increase their distribution. And so trying to find the perfect mentor for that. It's been an interesting process. So our third goal is to build our capacity to sustain long-term growth. So like I said, we started out in 2002, and we are 20 years old now, and we would like to be around another 20 years. So because our neighborhood has changed quite a bit as far as who is living there, the demographics have changed quite a bit. We've had a lot of younger people moving in. The housing has gotten much more expensive. So we really don't know who we should be catering to anymore. And so we're working with the Farmers Market Coalition to collect data. So doing surveys at the markets, looking at traffic patterns, talking to community councils, all of those kinds of things to have a good idea of where we should be going and how we should be getting there. Because ultimately the work that we do enhances the lives of our customers and vendors and builds a stronger food economy. So this funding that we have gotten because of the Farm Bill, because of the FMPP grant, is making all of this possible, because there is no way that we would have been able to come up with this money on our own. And so hearing ideas like Ben saying that the application process could be easier, and the reporting processes could be easier is something that rings strong with me. So it would be wonderful if that would be possible, because I know that our area farmers markets here would love to have this kind of opportunity, but they don't have the manpower to be able to do it. If you guys want to hear more about the farmers markets and watch our progress, you can visit our website at www.northsidefm.org, or you can just email me at info@northsidefm.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Maddie, we'll go ahead and turn it to you, and we may run over time slightly, everyone, so there may not be as much time for an open Q&A. So with that in mind, if you do have questions for our presenters, why don't we go ahead and post them in the chat so we can be sure to get Maddie's presentation in and still answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I will try to move quickly. So I want to talk a little bit about what the Greater Cincinnati Regional Food Policy Council has been able to do because of our support through USDA funding programs. And I'm so excited to kind of be among this panel that gives the kind of on the ground and the big picture perspective. So briefly, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about the Food Policy Council for context. We are actually an initiative of a regional sustainability alliance called the Green Umbrella that's in the Greater Cincinnati region. The Food Policy Council specifically kind of works across sectors collaboratively, for collective impact toward our vision of a resilient regional food system. Our footprint is a 10-county region across southwestern Ohio, northern Kentucky, and oops, that's supposed to say southeastern Indiana, but I think you can see from the picture. And we're right here in Hamilton County, and the Northside Farmers Market is within our footprint. So, and Produce Perks is also a member of our Food Policy Council. So we are excited to be among our members and partners today. We recently adopted the policy agenda of the Ohio Food Policy Network. So our focus areas for policy are farms and land use, access and education, infrastructure and institutions. So we kind of recently adopted those buckets of work, but we've been working across these areas for many years, and we've been around for almost a decade. And Green Umbrella, our parent organization, has been around for over 20 years. I'd also like to just acknowledge that the programs that I'm going to be talking about and the funding that we received and all that we've been able to do, a lot of that actually precedes my time. I've been with the Food Policy Council for about 1.5 years and only been the director for about 6 months. So I get the pleasure of talking about a lot of the successes and the fruits of the hard work of our partners and preceding staff. So just want to acknowledge all of that work is not just due to my own, and also wanted to acknowledge that because we are in part of a larger organization, we have been well placed, I think, relative to maybe some of our other partners to get access to some of these funding opportunities. And so we've seized that opportunity, but also, like Emily said, we're excited to hear about what others in the network are doing, alongside us to advocate for more accessibility and opportunity for smaller and other kinds of organizations. So with that preamble, I'm going to talk about a few of the USDA grants that we received and a little taste of some of the impact that we've been able to have alongside our many partners that we work on these projects with. We had a LFPP, which is a local food promotion program grant. So I did not put the spell out on the slide, but it is in this little picture that you can see. So that helps with all the alphabet soup. So we had the LFPP grant in 2017, or that was the granting cycle. And recently, these things take a while, but recently, a couple months ago, the USDA actually just shared a story map about the impact from that grant. And if you'd like to check out that whole story map, you can follow the QR code. I'll also share these slides in the chat when I'm done talking, and they'll be with the recording. but it's on our website. Basically, this grant was focused on uniting our two regional food hubs together, making them work more efficiently together, and expanding their reach to sell local food in our region. And we actually saw a lot of success. Our annual sales increased by a lot in local food sales from these two regional food hubs. They were able to get many more producers GAP audited and some of them certified. So one of the food hubs, Local Food Connection, really further developed its culture of food safety excellence, and they've been a leader in that and provided a lot of technical assistance and training to producers in our region as a result of that funding. Our food hubs also gained a lot of new institutional clients through the support of the grant. So the Local Food Connection Food Hub gained over 100 new institutional clients. We work a lot, the Food Policy Council works a lot with farm to school institutional clients. So school districts are a huge institutional partner and purchaser of local food in our region. And there were also some business changes. Local Food Connection was actually bought out by a larger regional food distributor, which has really increased their capacity kind of concurrently with the end of this grant. So the LFPP sort of led into our reception of or receipt of a regional food system partnership grant. Again, I apologize for not spelling that out, but it is here in the little picture on the slide. And so we're in the award cycle from 2020, and so we're just started our third and final year of that grant. And this grant is a big one. It has many different parts, but it was a really good fit for us because a lot of what we do is bring partners together, and it's allowed us to kind of connect a lot of different partners and stakeholders in different parts of our regional food system, and also distribute funds to them. So we have many goals and objectives with this grant to expand on institutional food purchasing of local food, increase consumer demand for local foods, and improve household access to local food. So 2 and 3 kind of relates to some of our work that we're doing with Produce Perks and the Ohio Farmers Market Network to make the access a little more accessible. So we're helping through this project to do some research about the use of technology to facilitate that. And then we're also working with some other organizations in Cincinnati who are distributing local food through neighborhood grocery stores and buying clubs. And then again, because a lot of what we do is convene and connect, we're expanding our capacity for local food systems change advocacy. So this is a picture of our report, and you can see the whole report online or the blog post about it. But in the first year, which ended last September, I haven't written the new report yet. We saw a huge increase in local sales, local food sales, a bunch of partners engaged, over 100 partners engaged, and a bunch of partners providing technical assistance. So that regional food system is fairly strong and growing. And like I said, we've seen success in terms of food access points, buying clubs, and locally owned grocery stores, improving neighborhood access. We've also kind of, just in terms of connecting the region, we have a really interesting project that's a book and art project, all about the Cincinnati food shed to kind of give us a shared identity as a regional food system. So that's pretty neat and unique. And I'm just going to really briefly mention that we've also been fortunate to be able to leverage support for our farm to school work specifically through the USDA's farm to school funding. And so we previously had a planning grant that allowed us to make a regional food farm to school action plan, do some research and assessment on barriers for schools and local food procurement, which has led us to partner with folks across Ohio doing farm to school work, including in Cuyahoga County. And because of sort of the for example, the LFPP and RFSP grants that I just talked about, and our farm to school work together during COVID when there were supply chain disruptions. Our institutional partners at schools were able to tap into the food hub and those supply chains for local food to get healthy local food to feed kids and families in our region. So that was really exciting. We now have a farm to school implementation grant. So just last week, we hosted a local menu takeover with 4 of our school districts in the region, 3 of which are in Southwestern Ohio. And a bunch of the schools served local dishes throughout the week. So that was really exciting. And Orange is not local, but this is a photo they used for this article. So don't worry, there was local food. This is more accurate. And so that means over 10,000 kids at Cincinnati Public Schools alone were eating local last week, which is really awesome. We've also been doing work to support educators through professional development, bring them together to work as peers and connecting them with food service and curriculum resources. So those are some of the things we've been able to do with some of our USDA funding. It's not a perfect system, as we've heard, so we are going to continue to advocate alongside all the other folks on this panel for better access and improvements to the programs, but